My own parents were criticized for being so far left in the conservative area, but that's how I was raised. So I need you to know that about me. The values that I bring to the selection process, and how I found a person named Hector LaSalle, who yes, he'll make history. And it's about time we stop making history. It should never have taken this long for a person of color, Hispanic, to lead the highest court in our state.
You just heard from New York Governor Kathy Hochul at an MLK Day event at a church. Just hijack the event to pressure people to support a conservative judge that she has nominated for New York's highest court. I just don't understand why she thought this was a good idea. It was a terrible idea, and Democratic lawmakers are against her nomination. And instead of, maybe listening to members of her party, listening to voters and their concerns about this particular conservative judge, she has decided to get pretty aggressive in promoting this individual. So the conservative nominee for the highest court is someone that we have discussed on the show before. Judge LaSalle is his name. Hochul has been getting widespread pushback from progressives and even some moderates for choosing LaSalle. He does have a history of ruling in favor of police and so-called pregnancy crisis centers, where anti-abortion, anti-reproductive rights individuals and activists dress up as doctors, pose as doctors, and intentionally trick women seeking abortions into going into these centers so they can then be spoken down to and persuaded against practicing their reproductive rights. Now, a group of 46 law professors wrote to Hochul arguing against his nomination. At least a dozen state Senate Democrats publicly oppose LaSalle, including the chamber's deputy majority leader and some who identify as Latino. Democrats currently control 42 seats in the 63-seat New York Senate. So these defections mean LaSalle cannot be confirmed without Republican votes. But Hochul, again, used Martin Luther King to claim that all the concerns and criticisms of LaSalle, based on his literal record, were just slanderous lies. Let's watch.
Take another look. Listen to the man. Don't judge. To know and understand. Open-minded. And all those ways that we want to be treated. Do it to others and have them do it to you. Who else wants to sit there and be judged after being reduced to lies? We see that lies travel around the world 4 times faster around the planet, as plane around the earth, before the truth has a chance to leave the target. That's what's happened here. The lies have circulated for the truth that has a chance to catch up.
What a disaster Kathy Hochul is. I mean, really. When this story first broke, Emma, I thought, I don't know, maybe she thought she was increasing diversity in New York's highest court by nominating a Latino judge, Hector LaSalle, but isn't privy to his conservative record as a judge. But no, it's clear that she is privy to it. And rather than, maybe listen to her colleagues, listen to concerns about this conservative judge, she wants to double down and smear people who are, again, basing their opinion of this guy on his record and his record alone.
Yeah. She's the epitome of like the suburban wine mom who posts the MLK quote on MLK Day, but doesn't understand that MLK was a socialist fighting anti-war causes during the Vietnam War, as well as the most important, racial justice advocate in the history of this country, arguably. And so, I mean, that is who she is. And what she's trying to do here is be Andrew Cuomo without really having the clout and the long history of bullying and payoffs that allowed Andrew Cuomo to be who he was. People forget that the reason that the New York Democrats were such a disaster this year is because Andrew Cuomo, through a variety of a long story of self-dealing and deals that he made with the state Senate and the state House, essentially punted redistricting to a Supreme Court that he had stacked through a variety of, again, favors and self-dealing with conservative judges who ended up drawing a map that was favorable to conservatives. And it's arguable that the Democrats lost the House because New York State was such a disaster for Democrats, despite it being a democratically controlled state. And you kind of see how these states that are fully democratically run, they operate in essence as mini Congresses with conservatives and conservative Democrats working together and progressives still fighting an uphill battle despite the state being solidly blue. Those power dynamics kind of reflect even in New York State. And what's so weird about what Kathy Hochul is doing here is Hector LaSalle does not have an extensive record, right? He kind of is coming out of nowhere, except for these very conservative kind of anti-choice positions, especially anti-labor positions where he sided, I believe, with corporations who had OSHA violations, et cetera. And she's going to the mat for him in a way that, as you say, makes even some more moderate Democrats uncomfortable. And what the path is looking like here is that in order to get this guy out of committee, since, by the way, AOC's victory, which was, I think, the impetus for this, and like a wider, more progressive revolution in the state, has brought more actual democratic socialists into the New York State House and Senate, as well as just progressives in general. Because of that, there's stronger opposition than when Cuomo was in office, when he had created this thing called the IDC, or helped create it, which were Democrats that caucus with Republicans, and they helped stymie progressive legislation. That doesn't really exist anymore because progressives fought back and won. And so Hochul is trying to do Cuomo politics with this conservative judge without the Cuomo infrastructure and support, and without like just kind of the name. I mean, there's a Mario Cuomo bridge right down the road. The Cuomo name holds a lot of weight here in New York. And Hochul is of that ilk, but she does not necessarily have the clout. And so my question really is, why is she so bullish on this guy? I know ideologically, I'm sure a moderate Democrat, quote unquote, like herself, would like a more conservative judge in that position to pull back on crazy leftists who might want, a wider healthcare policy, Medicare expansion, et cetera.
Bingo.
But I mean, I think that's it. But I also would guess, given what I know about New York State politics, that there's some petty corruption also involved behind the scenes, and that's just a guess. But I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think that speculation is an educated guess, to say the least, especially when you consider the pro-corporate stances that Hector LaSalle has had in the past. One thing to keep in mind when it comes to these moderate Democrats, I mean, at the end of the day, they're conservative Democrats in my view, right? And more importantly, pro-corporate Democrats, is that when it comes to some of the cultural issues that they purport to care so much about, when it comes to things like reproductive rights, they like to campaign on those issues and pretend like it's so incredibly important, so much of a priority for them. But it always pales in comparison to their desire to protect corporations, corporate wealth, corporate greed. And so, look, I'm also speculating here, but I would venture to say that his pro-corporate stances happen to be what appeal to someone like Governor Hochul. And any other cultural issue, again, those are just used as campaign strategies to get these folks elected. But when push comes to shove, if they have to choose between the two, I mean, I guess I'll accept his anti-abortion stances, his pro-pregnancy crisis center stances, as long as he's willing to protect the status quo when it comes to corporate greed. Again, I want to reiterate for now the third time, fourth time, I'm speculating, but that's where I would guess the motivation comes from. Any final words, Emma?
Yeah, I mean, that's an educated guess. I think it is very notable, as you say, that this push is happening after she just won a tougher than expected re-election fight here in New York State. And she really, she came from the Cuomo machine. She was his second in command. That's why he picked her. And it seems like, unfortunately, she's kind of dropped the veil, and her politics might be a bit more of a continuation of his than she advertised during her election.
That's definitely unfortunate. So we'll see how this plays out. But I am happy to see that there is some pushback from Democratic lawmakers in New York on this. We'll fill you guys in as we get updates to this story.